Whenever I need to kill some time, or I'm trying to fall asleep by watching YouTube at ungodly hours, I like to put on those Iceberg videos where the narrator explains a topic in great detail. Starting off with mainstream information that we all know quickly morphs into an odyssey into the obscure as you descend the iceberg, with the fighting game genre lending itself perfectly to this style of video. As there are two entire companies worth of material to cover, I thought creating a Marvel vs. Capcom Iceberg video to explain the series' lesser known details was an unstoppable idea. Before we continue, I would also like to shout out YouTubers Roundaway and TGS Media for previously putting their own spin on this topic. They based their videos off an older iceberg found on Reddit, and I'll include links in the description, but I've created my own personal iceberg for this video. Also, I've based its contents from the perspective of a casual fan, so even though the more obscure stuff might be common knowledge for those of us who have been playing Marvel for several years, the average fighting game fan isn't going to be aware of the iceberg's deeper information. Make sure to invest in some scuba gear because we'll be diving deep, and some of this stuff can get pretty wacky. Without further ado, let's begin the Marvel vs. Capcom iceberg by tackling the first layer. By this point, I'm sure that everyone and their dog knows about the Marvel vs. Capcom collection, so I wanted to include the game in the first layer. Announced in the June 2024 Nintendo Direct, all the old school games that die-hard fans had been grinding on Fightcade were proudly coming to modern platforms, alongside a smorgasbord of extras. Never before seen concept artwork and trading modes are freely accessible here, with my beloved X-Men vs. Street Fighter now having an official hitbox viewer. Speaking of X-Men, the game received its first home console port in over 25 years, making it easier than ever to grief people online with Juggernaut. Rollback netcode and a tricked-out lobby system ensures that online play functions smoothly, and I've had so much fun running netplay tournaments with friends. I can't stress enough how crucial this collection is for Marvel vs. Capcom fans, as for the longest time, it seemed that Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, and The Punisher were forever lost to time, but by some miracle, we can now play them on the Switch of all things. Whether you're a newer player or an old-school gatekeeper who's been grinding MSP for over 2 decades, chances are that you own this collection. Released in February 2011, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Fate of Two Worlds was the original version of the game, and even though it looks more or less the same as Ultimate, there are some huge differences. The character roster, menus, UI, and game balance are all different, with mechanics we take for granted in Ultimate being gone here. A massive one is being able to activate X Factor in the air, as you can extend combos or avoid punishment this way, but Vanilla contains no such feature. If you've committed to an air action and you can't super, you're out of luck. I also need to mention that common OTG attacks in Ultimate don't have that property here, which really throws me off. Hagar's dropkick and Captain America's shield slash both miss grounded opponents, ruining my muscle memory whenever I try to do combos. Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure that Vanilla Marvel 3 is the only game in the series to not be on PC, so trying to get your hands on it nowadays isn't the easiest thing in the world. For all of its flaws, and boy are there many, Vanilla was the first Marvel game I ever owned, so I can't knock it too much. It's an open secret within the fighting game world that Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes has a character roster with more to it than meets the eye. I mean, I was already happy with Mega Man being here, but you're telling me I can use codes to play as Red Venom and Orange Hulk? Oh man, I'm gonna explode! Along with our palette-swapped friends, Roll, Shadow Lady, and Gold War Machine can be found off the grid, and they each vary in uniqueness. My favourite of the bunch is easily Shadow Lady, as even though she looks like a mere Chun-Li clone, her fighting style is totally different. She has drills, electricity powers, homing missiles, and even a raging demon. How can I not love her? Rewinding a bit to Red Venom, while he may have the same health value as a Victorian child suffering from the plague, his speed and access to infinites make him a top tier. Reusing assets to more efficiently create funny secret fighters was a smart move on the developer's end, as it would have allowed them to stay within time and budget limitations while also sneaking in something extra. No matter how many times I use these fighters, they never get old. They're amazing. Now that you're a witness to Juggernaut's beauty in front of that iconic neon green square pattern, you probably know what I'm gonna talk about. Well, you do know, because there was a title card, but just ignore that. Under normal circumstances, Juggernaut's power-up special move buffs the damage of his next attack. It's kind of underwhelming, to be honest, but if you activate the install, tag out, and then tag Jugs back in, the orange glow around his body is gone, but the damage buff remains. Permanently. This provides an already high damage character with even more damage, allowing the most basic of combos to melt health bars. Hit confirming into a super is a borderline touch of death against lower health characters, and it gets even crazier during a DHC or team super route. Without the power-up glitch, Juggernaut wouldn't stand a chance against much of the roster, and although the exploit doesn't alleviate his glaring mobility issues and ultra-wide hurtbox, it at least gives him the opportunity to remain even more threatening when up close and personal. Interestingly, version 1.0 of the Marvel Collection removed the exploit, but after fan backlash, Capcom reinstated it. Just think about that for a moment. A major game developer patched in a glitch because of how beloved it is. Make one wrong move when Juggernaut is breathing down your neck and you'll be a goner instantly. Ever since Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was announced nearly 10 years ago as of me recording this video, the game's visuals have received criticism from all over the internet, but there was one scene in particular that set the FGC on fire. Yep, Chun-Li and her eldritch horror of a face could be found in a pre-release trailer, and was quickly memed on endlessly. With that said, she looks far better in the final game, so what's the deal? Well, since this trailer contains footage of an in-development build of the game, her character model simply hadn't been finalized yet. And it's like how Blanca's face looked like generic male number 1 in very early Street Fighter 4 trailers. Because the internet moves at a lightning fast pace, all that context went out the window as publication after publication wrote entire articles discussing this blunder. I was there, man. I remember reading whole think pieces about this situation back in high school, but looking back on it now, the controversy didn't amount to much. Capcom quickly updated Chun-Li's model before release, they brought back her air super from Marvel 1, and they kept her overall high-octane gameplay style, preventing any further issues from arising. Oh my goodness. Okay, even if you've never played a second of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 before, I'm confident that you know about Iron Man's iconic Infinite. What's funny is that War Machine can do it too, but thanks to this legendary tutorial video that would instantly get me demonetized, it's forever synonymous with Tony Stark. After launching the enemy into the air, you have to press light punch, medium punch, light kick, and heavy punch in a particular rhythm to keep it going. It's tricky to get down in the beginning, but once you get used to the Infinite's timing and spacing, it's not too hard to perform. If you're good at the game, that is, because the Lord knows I'm struggling. All these years later, and this route still gets a reaction from players, which is awesome to see. No matter how many years pass us by, Iron Man's Infinite making everyone excited is one of life's guarantees, along with taxes and other boring stuff. Whenever you see someone pull this off in a real match, you know they're legit, especially when they can start it like this. 1995's Marvel Superheroes ditches the tag team format the series is known for and goes for a 1v1 style instead, making it pretty underrated. It's heaps of fun though, especially when you activate the Infinity Gems. These are a common mechanic that can be found within less than 10 seconds of playing, but with how the game doesn't get much love anymore, I wanted to highlight this mechanic on the Iceberg. Power increases your damage output, reality summons elemental effects when you press a button, space grants you super armor, soul regenerates health, time boosts your speed, and mind automatically builds meter. Certain gems are recommended for specific characters, with my guy Wolverine being at his best when using the power gem. He already hits pretty hard, but this makes his moves even stronger. If you're dominating the competition, it's possible to have all 6 gems in your inventory at once, although the start button is how you switch between them. It can feel a bit awkward to reach over for the button when you're in a tight spot, but once you get used to it, switching gems isn't too bad. Overall, gems are an awesome mechanic as they allow players to personalize their fighting styles with unique installs. A Marvel vs. Capcom Iceberg wouldn't be complete without mentioning the DHC glitch, as it's one of the most iconic fighting game glitches I've ever seen. Popularized via the Chris Hu video where he explains how it functions, the glitch makes use of resetting damage scaling within a capture state. In layman's terms, combos in Marvel 3 will eventually end automatically due to a hidden feature called hit stun deterioration. As the player, you obviously want your combos to keep going for as long as possible, so if you force the enemy into a capture state and then DHC into a super that whiffs, all damage scaling within your route resets. Since your super missed entirely, the game assumes that your combo ended, because, well, why would you ever intentionally miss? So it decides to reset the scaling. In reality, you can keep attacking the enemy like there's no tomorrow, leading to consistent touch of deaths. Many common characters on the roster could easily make use of this bug in casual and competitive play, so it was seen constantly. However, Capcom removed the DHC glitch entirely for Ultimate Marvel 3, so it now just kind of exists as a ghost in the wind of outdated fighting game revisions. As the first Marvel-focused fighting game developed by Capcom, X-Men Children of the Atom is one of my MvC collection go-tos, as I enjoy messing around with its outdated features that were refined going forward. What's relevant for now though, is that like in Marvel 1, if you move the cursor off the select screen, we can find Akuma lying in wait. If you thought Akuma was nutty in Super Turbo, this takes things to a whole new level, is how I would have described him in 1994, as many of his moves in this game are now taken for granted. Red fireballs, multi-hitting Tatsus, and teleports are all par for the course in Street Fighter, although this game gives him a counter. I've never seen this move in any other game, and I'm not sure how useful it is, but at least it looks sick. What's funny is that Akuma has never been viewed as a strong fighter in COTA, what with his low health and basic normals. He can perform infinites, but in a game with Omega Red, Wolverine, and Psylocke, having an infinite or two just isn't gonna cut it. On the bright side, Akuma's appearance here is what makes COTA a true Marvel vs. Capcom game, so we essentially birthed the series as we know it today. Have you ever wanted to see the comic book action of Marvel vs. Capcom printed onto a real comic? Well, you're in luck, as Marvel has used plenty of the series artwork for their variant covers. These are when a comic issue is printed with more than one cover, so for example, if you aren't a fan of All New Venom's debut cover, where the titular character is swinging through the city, and instead demand a static image of his Marvel 2 render, then you can buy exactly this. Countless MvC variants were commissioned to promote Marvel Infinite and the collection, with the former getting some really good ones. Brand new artwork featuring dynamic posing and colourful designs were created solely for these variants, with my favourite involving Gamora and Strider Hiryu. I know next to nothing about artwork, but this piece's composition immediately grabbed my attention, and I love how Strider's scarf is super long, it wraps around both fighters. I've never been a huge comic book guy, but it's nice to see the world of Marvel vs. Capcom extend past the video game realm and into the real world. Quickly, think of a platform that Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released on. If you said anything but the PS Vita, then I don't blame you, cause I would too. If you didn't know, Ultimate Marvel 3 received a full port to Sony's fleeting handheld back in late 2011. The title's graphical and audio quality were reduced significantly to fit all its content onto a tiny Vita game cartridge, but hey, it works perfectly fine. All of the characters and their moves function just as well as they do on consoles, with there even being a Vita-exclusive touch control mode as a bonus feature. Ironically, this Vita port, which is the least played version of the game, contains an official hitbox viewer, as you can enable these when watching match replays. I have no clue why Capcom just didn't include this feature with Ultimate's home console or PC releases, but oh well. Outside of framerate drops during visually intensive team supers and a cramp-inducing control scheme, the Vita port is far from being bad, so I suggest giving it a shot if you ever have the opportunity. Found within the Clock Tower stage, one of Marvel 2's more famous Easter eggs is extremely simple to explain. By gazing upon the Dark Souls boss-sized clock in the background, you might notice that its record of time isn't static. In fact, the minute and hour hands may seem a bit suspicious. It turns out that this fictional clock reads data from your system's internal clock, displaying whatever time you have it calibrated to. For example, if you're recording footage at 9:35 like me, then the virtual clock will move its hands to that time's corresponding position. Whenever you see the stage in action, looking at the clock will let you know when that match was recorded, meaning that in some universe there's a chance of it being used as evidence in a court case. There are plenty of well-known audio snippets throughout the fighting game genre, but Marvel 2's character select vocal sample is one of the most beloved. I wanna take you for a ride! For years, fans wondered if this line was recorded specifically for the game or if it was taken from somewhere else, but as the answer was shrouded away in the murky depths of mystery, we never knew for certain. 24 years after Marvel 2's arcade release, the answer was featured within a YouTube video highlighting music samples found within old-school video games. The recording can be heard in all its glory on 1996's Black to Black Killer Vocals Volume 1 sample CD, along with countless other vocal takes. On a surface level, this line isn't very remarkable, but with how it's been accompanying all these wonderful characters for the past 26 years, it has a special place within the FGC. Unbeknownst to many fans of Marvel 2 onwards, X-Men Children of the Atom, X-Men vs Street Fighter, and Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter feature stage transitions, and these aren't like the ones in modern fighters where you're forced to wait for a cutscene to finish. There's nothing stopping you from moving around or attacking during the falling portion, and if you're skilled enough, you can keep performing combos on the way down. My favourite set of stage transitions in any fighting game comes from COTA's Mojo World stage, as there are 4 of them. Every layer has different background scenery to keep things interesting, and just like in X-Men vs Street Fighter, you can do whatever you want while descending. I have no clue what black magic Capcom used to pull this off back in 1994 on the same board as vanilla Street Fighter 2, but it hasn't aged a day. As these transitions can only be found within specific stages in older games that aren't played by casual fans, I wouldn't be surprised if many people didn't know about them. Long before the days of the Marvel Collection, American studio Iron Galaxy released Marvel vs. Capcom Origins, a compilation featuring Marvel superheroes and Marvel 1. Alongside Third Strike Online Edition and Darkstalker's Resurrection, this was part of the company's efforts to remaster older Capcom fighters and release them on modern systems with HD visuals, improved netcode, and one of the ugliest box arts I've ever seen in the fighting game genre. What's going on here? Anyway, as Origins was never released physically and was delisted in December 2014, the game has technically become lost media, but if you have a modded system or emulator, there's nothing stopping you from trying it out. In today's age, these games are readily accessible via the Marvel Collection or Fightcade, so if I'm being honest, there's very little reason to return to Origins. The compilation has its place within series history though, as for the longest time it was the only way to play pre-MvC2 titles on HD consoles. Sticking with the older games for a moment, did you ever hear that there's a secret character hidden in plain sight in Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter? By holding start and pressing any attack button over Dhalsim, he'll be replaced by Shadow, a blackened version of Street Fighter's Charlie. I mean that literally by the way, as his verses and super portraits are a solid black. Lore-wise, Shadow is an evil version of Charlie who was experimented on by M. Bison, infusing him with psycho power along the way. This sounds awesome, but his gameplay is more or less the same as regular Charlie's. His special moves have some extra visual touches that are meant to represent his newfound psycho abilities, but they don't change his gameplay in any meaningful ways. All the special and super moves you remembered from X-Men vs Street Fighter make appearances here, although Shadow Lady was nice enough to lend her Raging Demon to Charlie, so now he has one too! Shadow evokes that feeling of shock upon seeing a secret fighter for the first time, having neither a face or name that fits in with the rest of the game's lineup. His strange nature and admittedly excellent shading on his sprite makes me a big fan though, so I hope to see him return one day. What is it with Marvel characters having raging demons anyway? We all know that Akuma, Dan, and Hayato have them in Marvel vs Capcom 2, but I'm not sure of how many players are aware of Sakura's offering. After activating her Dark Sakura install, which costs 3 bars of meter by the way, you can perform her Raging Demon. Functionally, it's identical to Akuma's, having very similar range and an identical damage output, but what makes it special is the extreme meter requirement. 5 bars of meter is the maximum amount you can possess, and as 3 of these will be spent for the install, you'll need to generate another bar to initiate the super. Call me crazy, but I think this is the first and only 6-bar super in Marvel vs Capcom history. This prevents it from being on the level of Akuma's Raging Demon, but at least it doesn't sacrifice your life bar like Dan's. One of my favourite vanilla Marvel 3 exploits is the Dr. Doom crash, and I never get tired of featuring it in my videos. When inputting Doom's hidden missiles, you'll notice that the speed of his hand movements correspond to how quickly you're pressing the heavy button. This allows you to summon up to 8 missiles at your desired pace, but the glitch is gonna get around that limitation. If you input a missile summon after Doom clicks his fingers, but before his hand returns to normal, you're able to keep calling them in. Doing around 15 of these reps will cause massive framerate drops, with 20 causing your console to crash. As the exploit requires your opponent to stand perfectly still and never fight back, it'll never happen in a real game, so I do understand how this made it past debugging. Still though, I never get tired of seeing Doom's powers crash my Xbox, that's how strong he is. From being one of Street Fighter 3's Second Impact's strongest combatants to one of Third Strike's weakest fighters, Sean Matsuda has had a hell of a ride up and down the tier lists. But did you know that he makes an appearance in Marvel vs Capcom 1? Found within Ryu's opening, our yellow gi-wearing friend, along with his mentor Ken, can be spotted before a battle begins. Sean makes a second appearance in Ryu's ending, where he pesters the elder karate man to train him, prompting Ken to take this as an opportunity to get Sean out of his hair, so he just kind of leaves. Even though Ken isn't fully playable, Ryu can spend meter to adopt his playstyle, with Akuma following suit too. Since Sean's sprite data is kind of already in the game, I think it would have been awesome to see Ryu just actually steal some of his moves. Sean's unique Tatsu, DP, ground pound, assortment of supers, and wicked basketball skills would fit nicely into the world of Marvel vs. Capcom. And even though he has no gameplay representation, it's always a pleasure to see him in the same room as Spider-Man. Children of the Atom's depiction of Sentinel doesn't seem like anything special upon first glance. I mean, he's Sentinel, one of the most popular characters in Marvel, so even casual players will have seen Rocket Punch, Sentinel Force, and Plasma Storm before. However, if you experiment with the rest of his normals, you'll find attacks that were removed for future games. Crouching Light Kick is a mid-range punishment tool, Standing and Crouching Medium Punch are one-button projectiles, Heavy Kick is a high-damage mid-range strike that can start basic combos, Crouching Heavy Punch is a horizontal missile, Jumping Light Kick is a mid-range poke, Jumping Down Heavy Kick is a multi-hitting saw blade, Jumping Medium Punch is an overhead strike, with Down Medium starting up slower, and Jumping Down Heavy Punch is what I call the Scent Splash. This is easily my favorite normal in the game, as it looks hilarious, and as its hitbox is tied to Sentinel's chest, it's sometimes unclear which side you have to block it from. If it stuns the enemy, they remain flat on their back, allowing for OTGs. It's a shame that these attacks were removed going forward, as their animations still hold up beautifully. If you were a Street Fighter V soldier back in the 2010s, then there's no doubt in my mind that you remember the extra battles against specialized CPU opponents. These would often be regular fighters with new skins or visual effects, and emerging victorious would grant you special cosmetic gear that would unlock new costumes. One day, I remember logging into the game and seeing that Shadow Lady was waiting for me to challenge her, catching me completely off guard. I don't believe it's possible to access her anymore by normal means, but a fantastic video by Desk highlights just how much love went into her Street Fighter V rendition. Don't get me wrong, her insane combo routes, high damage, and input reading defensive capabilities made her a living nightmare to fight against, but every one of her old special moves was accurately recreated in HD. Hell, she even had ambiguous mix-ups, making her a true Marvel character. Seeing Shadow Lady fully realized in a modern Street Fighter game makes me wish for her inclusion as a proper playable fighter going forward. They just have to nerf her a bit here and there, and hey, there's a brand new character. Without question, X-Men vs Street Fighter's Manhattan stage is one of my favorites within the genre, but there's one extra detail that makes it the most unique stage in Marvel vs Capcom history. By moving left, we can find this police van hiding out on the side of the screen, and if we grab the opponent, something weird happens. No, that's not you seeing things wrong, the truck itself is part of the foreground, meaning it has a hitbox. To my knowledge, this innocent looking vehicle is the only stage hazard in the series, with plenty of videos online demonstrating some crazy corner combos. As I have the execution of a flopping fish, I like to throw the enemy into the truck with Juggernaut, start an air combo that ends in a heavy kick, and then go for some extra shenanigans, maybe a reset. This strategy isn't permanent however, as it can only be used 3 times. Any more than this, and the truck is gonna fly off the screen. If you aren't expecting it to be there, the truck can screw you over by interfering with your combo's pacing, but once you climb over the hurdle of having a hitbox on the side of the screen, all sorts of bewildering combos can happen. As the ultra-annoying final boss of X-Men vs Street Fighter and Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, Apocalypse is a gargantuan threat, one that's designed to steal all your pocket money via screen-filling special moves. But that begs the question, what if I want to use Apocalypse in multiplayer? If you're playing the original arcade version, this is impossible outside of hacking, but by jumping over to the latter game's PS1 port and meeting some hidden requirements, we can do just this. After waiting for around a week for the game to load, I managed to beat arcade mode without any continues, so now all I have to do is go to Akuma, press select 6 times and then press light punch. Woohoo! Apocalypse is here! While taking him for a spin in training mode, I found that he's actually quite clunky and his move list was all sorts of confusing. For starters, you need to input 3 punches and a direction to dash, as well as many of his special moves requiring this weird quarter circle down motion. I know that Charlie and Magneto have this in the other Marvel games, but it always feels weird for me to input. A video online features the Pliers and Energy Ball, neither of which are used by Boss Apocalypse in arcade mode. For whatever reason, they don't work when I test them out, despite their inputs being detected just fine. Apocalypse would obviously be banned from competitive play if this PS1 port were ever played legitimately, but with how he's a constant sitting duck, I personally don't view him as a strong fighter. Having the chance to play as him is really cool though, and it's nice that there's an official method to test his moves out. On the topic of secret characters, Marvel Superheroes features Doctor Doom and Thanos as playable boss fighters within the collection, although a third hidden fighter is found above Spider-Man, and she's not from Marvel. Darkstalker's Anita has been converted into a fully realized character, complete with unique fighting animations, although she has no audio or a unique windscreen, she simply uses Thanos' artwork instead. Weird. In terms of gameplay, I didn't think that she was strong at first. I mean, her combos are short and her normals are stubby as heck, but after messing around in training mode, I discovered some really dirty attacks. You know how Virgil has Round Trip in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3? Well, Anita has this too, and because she's so tiny, it's incredibly easy to outrun her sword. This means you can have a moving hitbox following you wherever you go, making it difficult for enemies to approach. Additionally, she can summon Akuma for an anti-air and Mei Ling for a close range strike. What makes Anita even stronger is what I view as one of the most busted supers in Marvel, Love for You. With one motion, you can summon 99 high-speed projectiles that function like a shotgun in that their damage is related to how close you are to the enemy. When up close, every character will lose around 75% of their health bar on hit, and on block, it does unbelievable chip damage. If your opponent has around half of their life bar remaining, forcing them to block Love for You will KO them, guaranteed. For all the time spent honing his magnetic powers, I doubt that even Magneto could handle Anita's pressure. Keeping up with the trend of naming things after shadows, Vanilla Marvel 3 had a set of DLC fights called Shadow Battle. These put you up against CPU enemies modeled after specific developers who worked on the game, with each profile having personalized difficulty rankings and comments. None of these battles, even the ones with maxed out difficulty stars, are very challenging, but it's still a nice mode to have, and I enjoy seeing who each developer liked to play as. For whatever reason, this mode falls under the game set of online features, even though they're strictly single player, so you'll need an internet connection to access them. These were released in packs throughout 2011, but were unfortunately given the axe with Ultimate's release in November the same year. Like with MvC Origins, Shadow Battle has been lost to time on the official Xbox and PlayStation stores, so you'll need to find their DLC installation files on third-party websites. They're not too hard to find if you know where to look, but from what I can tell, only the Xbox 360 files have been preserved in their entirety, as certain PS3 Shadow Battles are missing. As with all games in this series, X-Men vs Street Fighter doesn't allow you to select two of the same character for your team, but there's a precise glitch we can use to get around this. To initiate this, place your cursor to the left or right of your character you want to play as and then hold the stick in that direction. This will highlight your first chosen character while forcing the random select feature to kick in. If you've selected your chosen character via random select, the cursor isn't forced away, allowing you to select them again. Unlike most random selects from other games, the one in X-Men vs Street Fighter cycles through the roster in a predetermined order, so if you learn this pattern, you can consistently utilize teams with the same fighters. Double team supers, hard tags, and windscreens are good fun, satiating the needs of my glitch-loving brain. I'm not sure if this was patched out of future X-Men revisions, and therefore the Marvel collection, but if you have Fightcade, you can easily test it out. It's commonly believed that Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was the first title in the series to be released on PC, but in reality, this simply isn't the case. Children of the Atom released for MS-DOS of all systems in 1997, 2 years after its initial arcade launch. I found a website that let me play the demo for free in my browser, and I've gotta say, it's better than I expected it to be. Don't get me wrong, it's slow as butt and the audio quality is ultra compressed, but it's still leagues better than the PS1 port. 2 players can use the same keyboard to battle each other, and it doesn't seem like many animation frames were removed either. However, I noticed that Wolverine couldn't combo his crouching heavy kick into crouching heavy punch, as well as cancel his heavy kick's recovery frames into light punch, indicating that major balance changes were implemented into this DOS revision. Outside of novelty purposes, I don't think there's a reason to play this version nowadays, but if you take it for what it is, COTA on DOS is honestly not that bad. Early versions of games have always been an obsession of mine, with Marvel's official YouTube channel featuring plenty of vanilla Marvel 3 beta footage. We would be here all week if I were to detail every single feature that was removed or altered within the final game, but it's important to note that much of it came from 2010's Tatsunoko vs Capcom. Universal air dashes and a damage display are the big ones, although Captain America's green charging star, Dante's early hit properties on moves like Killer Bee and the Hammer, unfinished super animations, and TAC breaks automatically starting another one spring to mind. X-Factor activations forcing the camera to focus on the initiator were part of the game too, along with what seems to be 0 damage boost. With Devil Trigger and level 3 X-Factor in the final game, Dante does monstrous damage, but not in the beta. Character win poses also lack dynamic camera angles and visual transitions, but as this is an early build, that's to be expected. It's a pipe dream, but I really hope that early Marvel 3 builds get leaked one day. There are significant gameplay, visual, and audio changes present within these beta versions, and I would love to get my hands on one. As a thorn in the side of Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and really the human race at large, Mephisto has never made a playable appearance in Marvel vs. Capcom, although his sprite data can be found within Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. Blackheart was planned to have a super where Mephisto, who had turned into a giant dragon, would grab the enemy in his hand and breathe fire on them. This animation still exists within the game files, although the fire sprite doesn't render correctly. Other characters' screen-filling visual effects proved to be no challenge for Capcom's artists and programmers, so I can't imagine the concept itself would have been unrealistic to execute. It's a bit of a shame that Mephisto and his roided up right dragon arm can never be found via normal gameplay, but I guess his spirit lives on. Just as Apocalypse was playable on the PS1 via meeting specific requirements, Ultimate Marvel 3's depiction of Galactus is too. Over time, you'll unlock Galactus mode, technically making him a playable character. This means that along with the normal fighters, our purple cosmic horror has a character number associated with him in the game's files. To explain things simply, Marvel 3 lets you choose your team in advance as part of its license menu, so when you're on the select screen, pressing start and finding your team is all it takes to get into battle. This works by assigning every fighter with a unique identifier, starting with 0001 for Ryu and ending with 0050 for Hawkeye. For example, when Marvel 3 loads in my team of Wolverine, Dante, and Virgil, it finds these characters by loading in 0028, 0007, and 0022 respectively. Under normal circumstances, these numbers end at the aforementioned 0050, but as Galactus is technically on the roster, his number is 0051. By using tools to edit your pre-selected team's values, you could force the game to load in 0051 during online matches, meaning Galactus would spawn in. Just by looking at him, it's painfully obvious that this was never intended, and since all you had to do was copy your save data to a USB drive, the exploit would work on stock consoles with zero modifications. With how this stems from the engine loading specific values, I'm unsure if Capcom could have ever patched it out, but as online play is now conducted on PC via Parsec, we thankfully don't have to worry about Galactus anymore. I don't know about you, but I've always preferred the traditional hard tag and assist features in tag fighters over active tag, as I feel that the former leads to more player creativity and less homogenization within the genre. But at one point in development, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was set to receive a pseudo-active tag feature. Found by YouTube user The Skyray, the PS3 version of the game contains a scrapped quick switch mechanic that can be enabled via hex editing. For the cost of 1 meter, you can morph into any of your partner characters, allowing for otherwise impossible combos and resets. Had this mechanic appeared in the final product, the meta would have undergone significant changes, as the notion of strictly using assists, DHCs, and team supers within your routes would be shaken to its core. For example, imagine if any character could do a billion hit combo and then just instantly shapeshift into Frank West. In this case, you would never need to build a team around him to level him up, as any character could just summon Frank from anywhere on the screen without pause. Personally, I'm glad that this mechanic was scrapped, as it would have fundamentally changed the way that Marvel 3 was played, which would have been too much for a title update. The final game is perfect the way it is, even with some of its more egregious balance decisions. We've all probably been in that situation where you're enjoying a really good story only to find that, surprise, it was all a dream. This writing cliché has been used in countless literary works over the years, with X-Men vs Street Fighter's gripping narrative also falling victim to the trope. By finishing the arcade mode with Dhalsim, we view the mystic in deep focus, longing for an eternal solitude that shall not be disrupted. Only for his wife to come in and tell him that it's time for dinner. At this point, the game makes it clear as day, its events were nothing more than one of Dhalsim's dreams. With how insane Marvel vs. Capcom's characters and storylines are, I can't say for certain if this is canon, but I'm willing to bet that it isn't. This sequence might seem very inconsequential, but I wanted to include it because of how obscure it is, as well as proving that even Capcom in the 90s, which was arguably their peak, couldn't avoid a tired writing narrative in their crossover fighter of all the games. playing any of the pre-MvC2 games in the series as an epileptic would probably vaporize your eyeballs and instantly cause a seizure, as these titles have a lot of flashing lights. Thankfully, the Marvel Collection lets you disable these, allowing all of us to witness even the most intensive of supers without needing to visit the ER. The same can be said for Marvel 1's PS1 port, as this too lacks the intense light effects, but it wasn't always this way. By playing a Japanese demo version of the game and enabling a GameShark code, we can enable a flashing lights option in the settings menu. Enabling this feature will bring up the following message. If the flash option is set to on, screen blinks and flash effects will be enabled. In very rare cases, such as during strong flashes, epileptic seizures may occur. There are people who have these symptoms. If this happens to you, we recommend that you leave this option off. An additional image instructing the player to consult the game manual about the effects of flashing lights can also be found within the files, but this otherwise goes unused. As the Conning Room Floor website mentions, this Marvel 1 port was released a few years after the infamous Pokemon Epilepsy controversy, where Pikachu's lightning attacks would cause severe flashing lights. Even as someone who has zero issues with epilepsy, the scene is extremely hard for me to watch, so I genuinely have no idea how it was sent to air. I suppose Capcom wanted to replicate the arcade experience by letting players take in the flashes at home, but in the end, they definitely made the right call by removing them altogether. Marvel 2's iconic assist system is paramount to the series' overall identity, but it went through numerous revisions before being finalized. According to game director Tatsuya Nakai, assist type selection is another idea that existed from the beginning. Initially, it was a personality-based system. A bullish Ryu would throw a fiery Hadouken, whereas a cold-hearted Ryu would throw an icy Hadouken, for example. And from there, after a lot of trial and error coming up with something that would be easy to intuitively understand, we came up with the system you see now. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I'm not sure what personality type would lead to Gene Splice or Captain Corridor. Jokes aside, the mention of two separate Hadoukens in Nakai's quotes indicates that assists were meant to serve as altered versions of one special move. You know how characters in Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter have the one assist? Well, imagine if they had 3 iterations of that move, each with visual and gameplay changes. Developing a fighting game so that each fighter's personality would impact their support value sounds very off-kilter, and although I love the system that we ended up with, I can't deny that this older personality version sounds super interesting. This penultimate Iceberg fact is what I deem to be the most heartbreaking, as had it ended up working out between Capcom and Marvel, we could have been in for something amazing. If you've ever watched those vanilla Marvel 3 intro movies and thought, wow, it would be so cool to have a Marvel vs Capcom animated series, your wishes were actually being heard by both companies. According to Marvel 3's lead writer and Wolverine aficionado, Frank Thierry, both a mini-series and an animated series based on the game's storyline were set to be released. However, neither Capcom or Marvel could reach mutually agreed upon terms, so the deal quickly fell through. Around the same time, Street Fighter Cross Tekken received a fully voice-acted miniseries released for free on YouTube, and it would have been so cool to see a Marvel 3 version! These promotional trailers haven't aged a day, so to get fleshed out versions with voice acting and plot development? Man, I would have gone feral. I wonder what exactly happened behind the scenes that prevented these from entering production, but I imagine it was some legal drama involving character rights or something along those lines. The final piece of trivia for today involves Japanese comedian Noritake Kanashi, better known as Norimaro. The lovable loser himself is a mere joke character within Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, but in real life, Norimaro is a televised comedy veteran, always knowing exactly how to get a laugh from the audience. To capitalize on this, Kanashi and a TV crew visited Capcom's offices during the game's development, and what they filmed is timeless. In addition to watching the bizarre nature of Japan's physical comedy, an early build of the game can be found, one that includes the infamous Koncho. As sticking your fingers up the opponent's butt is pretty disrespectful, I can't imagine Marvel would have been happy seeing their characters be treated this way, so the Koncho was removed from the final game. Even if you aren't a big fan of Norimaru's one and only video game appearance, this segment is a riot. In addition to Kanashi and friends going ballistic over seeing their dumb idea make it into a commercial product, we can also see recording sessions for Norimaru's voice lines, including the Koncho. Watching this video puts a huge smile on my face, as even though I can't understand a word of Japanese, the crew's excitement and laughter is universal. It reminds me of watching Jackass as a kid and cracking up at the most demented stunts possible. I love it. Oh boy, that was a lot. Researching all of these topics was good fun, and I loved being able to quickly jump from point to point. It's not something I have the chance to do very often in my videos, so this was a great creative exercise for me. More importantly, I really hope that you, the viewer, enjoyed learning more about the series, even if some of the Iceberg's contents consisted of common knowledge. With how busy my personal life schedule is, I wasn't able to fit everything I initially drafted into the final video, so if you feel that I left something interesting out, please let us know about it in the comments. The more trivia our brains can absorb, the better. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.